Kumite, kumite, kumite. Bloodsport. Now, Bloodsport came out in 1988 and claims to tell the true life story of Frank Dux, played here by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now, Jean-Claude Van Damme is an actor that I really haven't talked about on this channel yet. He was up there with the Schwarzeneggers and Stallones of cheesy action movies of the 80s and 90s, but for some reason Van Damme always had a tendency of picking the bad ones. He never really got that big break that really propelled him into the public eye, into superstardom like a lot of his contemporaries. But Bloodsport, I think, is a notable exception because I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. I didn't know it existed until only a few years ago, and it immediately became one of my guilty pleasure movies because it's kind of the best Mortal Kombat movie ever made without actually being a Mortal Kombat movie. And I would say the original Mortal Kombat movie is actually not that bad, and the new one that we only got a few years ago was pretty good. But Bloodsport still has a special place in my heart because it gets the Mortal Kombat tournament fight championship angle so right. That's really all this movie is. Everything else is either set up for the tournament, or people trying to keep Frank Dux away from the tournament, or Dux talking to his love interest about the tournament and why it's so important to him. It's all about the tournament, and honestly that's probably the best thing for this movie. The last thing this movie needs is to be bogged down with plot. And if there's one thing any Mortal Kombat fan knows, it's that the premise of this super secret underground tournament and seeing a bunch of different people from different nationalities and fighting styles come together to compete in said tournament is such an inherently cool idea that if you just show that for 90 minutes, people are going to be entertained. And yeah, Bloodsport is a real testament to that. It is absurdly entertaining. But does that make it good? Well, that's where this does kind of fall into my guilty pleasures, because the acting is not great. Jean-Claude Van Damme, not a great actor. Stunt performer, martial artist, yeah, he's incredible. He's amazing. I mean, you see the splits he can do. And I really feel like everybody, with, okay, maybe a couple of exceptions here and there, were chosen for this movie, not because of acting ability, but because they could pull off the stunts and the martial arts required for this type of movie. But one of those exceptions is Donald Gibb as Jackson, and he's the other American that goes to this super secret tournament in Hong Kong. And he's basically Bear Hugger from the Wii version of Punch-Out, this big kind of overweight, burly man who just grabs you. He's got no form, no rhythm, no distinct fighting style of any kind. In fact, I think they went out of their way to not have him use any specific fighting style. He just uses brute force, bare hands. More often than not, he just picks people up and throws them out of the ring. He doesn't really fight in the same way a lot of these other more trained martial artists fight. But Donald Gibb actually does give a pretty awesome performance as Jackson. He's just so likable, and you immediately buy the chemistry between him and Jean-Claude Van Damme, which I do attribute more to the talent of Donald Gibb than Jean-Claude Van Damme, because even in their scenes together, one is definitely a much more capable actor than the other. But that's enough setup. Let's talk about why people watch this movie, and that's because of the fighting, the tournament, the different fighting styles going head to head, the fatalities. And yeah, this is probably a good time to bring up the fact that this movie was the inspiration for Mortal Kombat. It's not just very similar to Mortal Kombat. This movie came out and the developers of Mortal Kombat saw it and actually made a game out of it, making it a little bit darker, a little bit more fantasy, adding different superpowers and realms. But really going back to Bloodsport, you can see the bones of that idea here, especially in Jean-Claude Van Damme's Frank Dux, which in Mortal Kombat clearly became Johnny Cage. In fact, in this movie, you see Johnny Cage's signature splits, uppercut to the groin punch. Yeah, that's in here too, and it's awesome. But as soon as this tournament starts, we immediately learn who the big threat is, and it's Chun-Li, and he's Goro for all intents and purposes. He's the big threat, he's the final boss, he's the champion, he's crazy, and he's not afraid to use much more force than necessary and even kill people just to prove a point. So in that way, he's kind of the perfect villain. And yeah, he's over the top, but that's really the type of villain you'd want in something like this. You want someone that you'd be like, oh yeah, that's the troublemaker, take him down, Frank. And have I mentioned yet that this movie is cheesy? Yeah, it's insanely cheesy. And honestly, I probably wouldn't love it so much if it wasn't this cheesy, because it just revels in the enjoyment of watching fighters go head to head, and there's slow-mo, and there's insanely over-the-top expressions. There were times when I thought Jean-Claude Van Damme's eyes were gonna literally fall out of his face. His expressions got so extreme. And everybody is like that. All the fighters are such exaggerated cartoons. In fact, there's a fighter in this that I'm pretty sure is just Don Flamenco from Punch-Out. Yeah, that's the second Punch-Out reference in this video, and I don't care. But like Punch-Out, everything's so exaggerated so that you immediately identify the different fighters and they don't all just blend together. And when the martial arts go down, they go down. You really soak it in. This is some of the best tournament style fighting I've seen in an American movie since The Karate Kid. I know different places in Asia have a whole market on this kind of movie, but for an American-based studio to pump out something this clean, and not just clean, but actually make it kind of plausible in that heightened reality kind of way, that's really impressive, and we don't see that a lot. And I'm so happy that Bloodsport shows it in all the glorious slow-mo and close-ups where you really see what these performers are doing. Everything just works here. But you know it gets real when Jackson goes up against Chung-Li and Jackson gets his face stomped in, and it's not good for Jackson. He gets hospitalized and Chung-Li takes his headband. So now Frank Dux has to step up and avenge his friend and defeat Chung-Li, win the tournament, and get that headband back. And yeah, it goes down exactly like you think. There's no real surprises in this movie. In fact, the predictability of it is part of the fun. You just sit back, relax, eat some popcorn, have a good time, maybe even have a few drinks going around. This is the perfect movie for that scenario, where you don't take it too seriously. You just have a lot of fun. It gets you pumped up. It's got those 80s power ballads that really hit you right in the nostalgia. But I did say at the start of this video that this movie claims to be the true story of Frank Dux and his life. And while Frank Dux was a real person, he was a Marine, he was a martial artist, and he did start his own style of Dux-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu, he made some pretty out there claims, most of which have been called into question, if not proven verifiably false. This movie does nothing to set the record straight on that. This movie is the embodiment of what Frank Dux wanted people to believe when he was doing his whole sales pitch for his martial arts style, most of which was BS. So really this movie is best enjoyed knowing that it's predominantly fiction, that yeah, there's maybe a nugget of truth in there, but also with this secret underground tournament and the world records and the stats that they give at the end of the movie, it's pretty safe to say that that is all false. So it's best to view this movie as a work of fiction. And viewing it as a work of fiction, it's still really entertaining, although there are still a few moments here and there that do still take me out of it. Not the cliches about the tournament or the structure of the story, because yeah, that's cliche as all get out, but that's part of the fun. No, I'm talking about the stuff where Hollywood clearly doesn't understand actual martial arts, so they just kind of make stuff up. For instance, there's the dim mak, the death touch. And let me set the record straight, there is no such death touch in existence. Anybody that claims to know the death touch is lying to you. It was a complete fabrication way back in the day. You can do your own research on that, and it's verifiably false. But of course, this movie being the cliche mess that it is, Frank Dux knows the death touch and he channels his chi and uses it. And he actually demonstrates in one of the weirdest ways possible. They got a bunch of bricks lined up on a table and it's like, okay, pick a brick, I'll break it. And they pick the one at the bottom. And he punches the one on the top and only the one at the bottom explodes. Okay? I mean, people make fun of the Karate Kid movies for Hollywoodizing karate. But I'm sorry, I'll take wax on, wax off, sand the floor, breaking the ice with a Shudo strike any day over whatever that was with the brick. That's a little too much even for me. But that's about it for Bloodsport. There's not much to say. It's just so entertaining, so much fun. It knows what kind of movie it is and sticks to that formula, sticks to that style, and just goes all the way with it. And it's a movie that I watch every so often when I'm in a funk and I just want some good martial arts action, and I put it on and always finish the movie in a better mood than I started out with. But now I turn over to you guys. What do you think about Bloodsport? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby. This is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.